So the sun's out now and it's not raining, so I can put the umbrella down. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on from where I left off in the last talk at 12 o'clock, and I'm going to talk about, see, I've got a bit of a cheat sheet here. I'm going to talk about different ways of looking at project management which help with its success. But first of all, if you remember from the last video, I talked about the two value streams that are involved in generating new products being kind of different from the value stream that there is for producing existing products. I'm going to talk really close into the phone because the wind's blowing now. And those two value streams for a new product, one of them is weird and the other one doesn't exist. So the weird value stream is the idea. Why do I say it's weird? Because very often where the idea has come from and how it's accrued value, how it's gained support, is kind of completely opaque. It's not a straightforward process that like bits have been added to it and then it's they're shown that it's definitely going to deliver value for money, or it's definitely going to be a good idea, and then it's approved and then you get funding to do it. That's not how ideas, in my experience, spring into being. And very often the idea has got something around it. This sounds dismissive, but if you look at ideas, there's something like this is true about them. Very often it's got something around it, some kind of language around it, which makes it kind of shiny and discourages thought. So the kind of classic one is like, it's new, obviously, because it's a new thing. It's faster. It's using new technologies. It's doing exactly what the old one did, but better. It's a copy of something that our competitors are doing. It's like this thing, but for this thing, sort of like Facebook, but for dogs, or kind of like Tinder, but for horses. I don't know. So kind of like, there's something about it that kind of makes people excited about it, but also at the same time discourages thought. That's the weird value stream. And sometimes I think of that value stream as like a unicorn. It's kind of, and it's crucial to understand that kind of one important thing about this value stream is the thing it produces doesn't exist. A lot of people forget that the idea is just an idea. It doesn't exist. There's no real thing there. And the other value stream that doesn't exist. I'm passionately saying weird value stream there. The other value stream that doesn't exist. Why doesn't it exist? Because this is a new product. So we haven't figured out yet how to put all the bits together that make this product valuable. And crucially, we haven't figured out how to connect this to people who want to use it, who might value it. All of those things that Toyota have been doing for the last 90 years for their cars to make this kind of perfect production line that delivers cars to people who want them. We don't have any of that stuff. We might have bits, but we don't know how those bits connect together. And this is the bit that is really kind of difficult, and it's why I'm going to talk about different ways of looking at project management in this video. Between these two value streams of the idea that we don't know where it came from most of the time, and it's shiny and it has language around it to kind of discourage thinking about it too much, and the non-existent value stream, between those two is this kind of desert. Why is it a desert? It's a desert because it sucks away energy and effort, and it doesn't really give anything back. It doesn't really give any reward, doesn't really give any love, doesn't really give any support. And part of the reason for that is that actually starting to build the real value stream that you need for a project, actually starting to build that, in many ways undermines the original idea, the shiny idea. The shine starts to come off the idea. So when you start to build something, let's say you start to build something and it's based on a new technology, and when you start to use that technology, you find out that this new technology doesn't do what it's advertised to do, or it just doesn't work very well, or it just isn't ready, then by trying to actually implement the idea, you're undermining the idea. And very often, the people connected with the idea are quite senior people. They're people who've got power and authority and kudos, and that's why they got the idea funded. That's why this thing happened. So by actually starting to kind of look at the idea and uncovering the problems with the idea, you're undermining the people who actually had the idea. And this kind of desert, we'll call it other things rather confusingly, at some points we'll call it a swamp, but this desert between the weird idea and the weird value stream and the value stream that doesn't exist, this is where you spend most of your time as a project manager. And I find it really weird that people don't talk about this much. They talk about the process, they talk about how important it is to have various meetings, they talk about various documents that you need to create, etc. They don't talk about this kind of emotionally desperate situation that you're in most of the time with a product, where the people who want it are kind of nervous because as you start to progress you're showing that there are problems with the idea, and the people who are doing it are nervous because every time they progress they find problems with the idea and they're not getting any reward. There's no value coming back from what they're doing until they can finally connect with their public. This is something that, I mean, I say I don't understand. I absolutely understand why people don't talk about this, because it's a negative experience, it's a negative emotion, and also it's an emotional place to be, with kind of tight lips and frosty words and difficult conversations. And most books about business want to talk about climactic moments and everybody being happy and friendly and positive, etc. And that's not my experience of this struggle. But there are ways that you can get through this. So I'm talking on the meadows to myself, so I can do things in whatever order I want. And I've in the last few days been talking next about the swamp, but today I'm going to talk next about the pirate ship. You see pirate ship there, and I'm going to talk about pirate ship, and pirate ship is broken down into 3 different bits. And all of these are really about, so like, how are you going to get across this desert between the idea, the weird idea, the kind of weird value stream, and how are you going to get to the value stream that exists? How are you going to build that? Well, this might sound facetious, but one of the things that you have to do is you have to set off. You have to actually make a move in that direction. And one of the ways that I explain this is, you may feel that I'm lurching again, but trust me, this is relevant. In improvisation, I've read a couple of books by Keith Johnston about improvisation. Keith Johnston died sadly recently, but major kind of innovator in improvisation from the 50s. And he talks in one of his books about improvisers doing something safe and boring when they're on the stage, rather than doing the thing that will advance the story. And the example that I give in the book about this is, let's imagine that you have 4 improvisers on a stage, and they ask for a work setting, and somebody says on the deck of a ship. And so they're on the deck of the ship, and somebody puts an imaginary telescope to their eye, and they say, oh look, on the horizon there's a pirate ship. Now, once the improviser has mentioned that pirate ship, everybody in the audience, what they want to see is they want to see that pirate ship turn up. They want to see an engagement between this ship that these 4 improvisers were on and the pirate ship. But sometimes in that kind of situation, in fact, very often with naive improvisers, somebody will say something like, oh, let's scrub the decks. And everybody will join in. They'll say, yes, let's all scrub the decks. And what is happening here is, this is what Keith Johnson calls it. This is agreed activity. This is everybody agreeing to do something safe that doesn't push the story forward, rather than tackle the thing that's on the horizon, the pirate ship. And dragging this back to software development and project management, something very similar to this can happen in projects, that people can notice a big problem on the horizon, and just like very often without any discussion, just agree not to comment on it, just agree not to talk about it, and to do something else. So like they're doing something, but the work that they're doing, the work in inverted commas, isn't causing any trouble, it isn't causing any discussion, and because it isn't causing any trouble and it isn't causing any discussion, it's not actually moving the project forward. And what those people on that project, like the people in the improvisation, need to do is they need to tackle the pirate ship. So this is a crucial aspect of getting across this desert, is set off. Start to discover obstacles in that desert that you need to kind of traverse in order to get to the other side of building a value stream that delivers genuine value. Now, why might people not want to do that? Well, one absolute cast iron reason is if they've attempted to before, they've pointed out that there are obstacles to kind of senior people. If we're in the improvisation thing, they've pointed it out to the captain, or in software development terms, they've pointed it out to some senior management, and they've been told off for it. They've been basically bollocked for kind of noticing things that might be a problem. Now remember, I talked about this shiny idea, right? So remember I said that like once you start to work on something, you knock the shine off it. And the people who had the shiny idea, they're very nervous about this. So it's very tempting for them when people start to uncover problems to kind of cut them down, shut them up, talk about positivity, say that they don't want to hear any negative attitudes to what's going on. So those kinds of things, right? And that's why you don't have to do that very often before you've taught everybody on your team never to say anything about a difficult thing that's coming up. And so I said it breaks down into three parts of the pirate ship. So the first part is the agreed activity you need to break, the agreed activity you need to notice the pirate ship. And noticing the pirate ship is the second part of it. The third part is reporting this to senior people, reporting it to the captain if you're in the improvised situation, or reporting it to senior people if it's something that you can't fix as a team, if it's something that needs outside help to fix, or it's something that's going to take the team a lot of thinking and effort to do. And another thing, this is coming back to Keith Johnston, and I'll put some references to Keith Johnston's works in the comments for this video. Coming back to Keith Johnston, one of the points that he makes is that every discussion that humans have is a status transaction. Every discussion that two people have slightly lowers or slightly highers the status of each of them. And what this means in terms of reporting bad news to senior people, especially if they're the people who are the keepers of the idea, the people who got the kudos and support for the idea in the first place, is that you're in a very dangerous position, because what you're trying to do is, by reporting bad news to them, you're lowering their status. Now again, you might think this is actually one of the most important aspects of project management, is coming up with ways to point out bad news, or actually in some ways gesture at bad news without being the one to point it out. That's kind of one of the tricks. Without lowering the status of the person that you're talking to so catastrophically that they have to either shut you up or get rid of you. And there are a bunch of techniques for doing this. As I said, one is to kind of create artifacts that track progress, and on those artifacts have things that show what the problems are, and then rather than being the person who points these things out, like being the person who sits next to this senior person while they observe this thing, they observe this problem. So kind of in negotiation terms, this is called side by side rather than face to face. Another thing is to try and make your status as near theirs as possible, but never higher than theirs. And part of the thing about that is, in my experience, it means you have to do as much, and again this is taking techniques from negotiation, do as much as you can to build a rapport with them, to build a relationship with these people that you're going to have to tell bad news before you have to tell them bad news.